So good afternoon, everyone. Respected chair and discussant, and dear researchers. Today I'm going to talk about my research work, that is labor productivity, employment elasticity, and structural transformation in Uttar Pradesh. It is an actually outcome of an ongoing research project, which I have been sponsored by government of Uttar Pradesh, and it is on basically changing trends in structure, economic growth of Uttar Pradesh. So you all know that there is a structural transformation theory which says that the key to higher trajectory growth relies on the fact that employment and output shifts from low productivity agriculture sector to high productivity industrial sector, and finally to the services sector. And this model of structural transformation has been clearly exhibited by the growth performance of developed countries, and they have followed this typical pattern of structural change where employment output were first dominated by agriculture sector, followed by industrial and services sector. However, Indian growth story is something different to it. In the case of Indian growth experiences demonstrate that share of income directly jumped from agriculture sector to the services sector, bypassing the industrial sector. And this kind of structural transformation in the case of Indian economy has often been referred as premature tertiarization of the Indian economy. Another fascinating picture of this Indian growth history is that employment remained stagnated in the agriculture sector, whereas there was a particular shift in output, but it was not accompanied by the shift in employment as well. And similar kind of structural transformation process observations were also being reported from the growth experiences of subnational economies of India, that means state governments. If I talk about Uttar Pradesh, because my study is not on the whole Indian economy, it is on the state of Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh is the most populated state of India, and it is characterized as one of the most socioeconomically backward and poor governance states after Bihar. So we are at the bottom, but just before Bihar. If it would have been a separate country, it will be a sixth most populated country of the world. The gap, and one more thing, the gap between national GDP and state GDP is also rising over a period of time. That means catching up process is also quite slow in the case of the state. And the state also has one of the highest inter-regional socioeconomic disparities and poverty among all the states in the country. Recently, in 2018, our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji has given a clarion call to make Indian economy a $5 trillion economy by 2027. And in that clarion call, he also said that Uttar Pradesh must contribute $1 to this $5 trillion economy. So taking that as an order, Yogi government has initiated plan, and they have made UP economy as $1 trillion economy by 2027. Now my apprehensions are that given the kind of socio-economic development of the Uttar Pradesh, this target seems unachievable, and especially if a state is failed to achieve the proper structural reforms, then it will be impossible to achieve this target by 2027. This slide is giving you a brief overview of the current structural share, sectoral share of state GDP and employment. So you can see that in last 3 decades, from 1991, the agriculture share has come down in output from 42.73% to 22.80%, and that of industry has gone up from 20.01% to 25.99%, and that of services 37.25% to 51.21%. So we are seeing clear sectoral shift. Agriculture share is going down, and it has come to almost half, but there is no significant increase in the share of industrial sector. That is only from 20 to 25%, around 26%. But in services, we are again observing the significant shift. But if you look at the sectoral share of employment, So we'll find that more than 50% of the employment is still stagnated in the agriculture sector, and remaining part is almost equally shared by industry and services sector. So we further argue that without adequate structural transformation, UP cannot progress, UP cannot achieve that aim. But with that, productivity differentials are also an important aspect of structural change. Rate of structural transformation, especially the labor productivity, means rate of structural transformation depends upon the rate of change in productivity, especially labor productivity. So with this background, the current study aims to analyze process of structural transformation in Uttar Pradesh from the perspective of labor productivity. The study mainly plans to analyze sectoral shifts in labor productivity and employment elasticity during last 3 decades. The data, this study is based on data, and it covers the time periods from 1991 to 2019 and 20. And we have taken the gross state value added data of Uttar Pradesh from EPW Research Foundation India Time Series. And employment data has been taken by the Government of India publication that is published by NSO, National Statistical Office. And they have quinquennial rounds earlier, and it was known as unemployment and employment survey. But last 3-4 years, they are having annual survey that is known as periodic labor force survey. One more thing, I apologize in advance. There may be some typographical error. Please ignore that. Okay, so in terms of methodology, the total productivity growth, the total labor productivity growth comes from 2 sectors. One, because of the within sector growth, the sector's own contribution to the labor productivity growth. And second source of labor productivity growth is the structural change. So we are also following this approach that overall productivity growth is the summation of sector's growth contribution plus a structural change component. And we have adopted the Macmillan and Roderick methodology to decompose the overall labor productivity growth into sector's contribution, sector's own contribution, and basically the contribution due to structural change, to understand the role of structural change played in labor productivity. So in the bottom equation, the first part is reflecting a sector's contribution, and the second part is reflecting the structural change contribution. We have also calculated rate of structural transformation, and we have calculated for both, for output as well as for employment, what is the rate of structural transformation from agriculture sector to non-agriculture sector. And we have utilized this particular equation where ln is labor share of labor force in non-agriculture sector, LT is labor force in total labor force, and ln dash and LT dash are differentiated value, first order differentiation. So this is again a detailed basically presentation of sectoral share of employment in Uttar Pradesh. So I would like to highlight 2-3 things in this one. So if you see that agriculture share has declined, but not in the sync of output. Now agriculture is contributing around 22-23% in the case of state, but still it is still providing livelihood directly to around 52%. Indirectly, we say that 70% people is depending upon the agriculture. Second, industry. In industry also, kindly see construction sector. Basically, we believe that it will be the manufacturing sector which is labor intensive and will provide labor jobs to majority of the labor force. But in India, and especially in basically Uttar Pradesh also, real estate sector is on the boom, and majority of the growth in the secondary sector is coming from the construction sector. But our argument is employment in construction sector is highly casual in nature. Majority of people who are engaged in the construction sector, they are in the form of casual labor. There are no social benefits, and the degree of risk is high. Nowadays, the construction sector is on the boom, and that is why this flow of employment is coming. But once this bubble is burst, then what will happen? So this is not sustainable in the long run. And in services also, although the output is increasing, the share of output is increasing, but still the employment share is not increasing in the case of services also. And this slide is showing the percentage point change in sectoral share of employment. So, Joe, whatever I have talked in the previous one, this is showing in terms of change percentage. So, in this slide, we have given the labor productivity figures in terms of rupee. These are in terms of Indian rupee. So you will find that labor productivity is increasing in both in agriculture, in industry, and services. But what is the relative situation? Which one is moving faster? This is clear from this slide. In this case, we have calculated share of labor productivity as part of agriculture. So in the first one is manufacturing divided by agriculture. In second one, industry divided by agriculture. In third one, services divided by agriculture. So you can see that the relative productivity differentials are same. There has been no change in last 3 decades. Still, the manufacturing productivity is around 2.4, 2.5 times of agriculture in industrial sector as a whole of agriculture. But look at the services sector. The labor productivity is rising like anything in the case of services sector as compared to agriculture. So that means agriculture productivity and industrial productivity, they are going side by side with almost same rate. There is not significant difference, and that is why their relative position is almost same. But in the services sector is growing quite good pace. This is showing the decomposition results. And in decomposition results, again, I would like to focus on the first 3 data columns for aggregate picture. So you will see that first GW is growth of labor productivity, aggregate growth. WS is sector's contribution within sector, and SC is structural change contribution. So you will see that structural change contribution in overall productivity growth is quite low. Majority of the growth in productivity, labor productivity, is basically coming from sector's own growth, not from the structural change components. So, and if you look at the agriculture, industry, and services wise, then in that case also look at specifically industry and services. So, in industry, one thing it is important that whatever grow, basically the contribution is higher than other 2 segments. Means if we are able to move forward our industrial sector, then the pace of structural change will increase, as well as the shift in productivity will also be higher, because structural change contribution of industry is highest as compared to agriculture and services sector. And this is the rate of structural transformation, and we have taken 2 components. One is agricultural to output to total non-agricultural output, and agricultural work to non-agricultural work. Look at the last column. Which is summarizing the combined period. And you will find that agricultural output, the rate of structural transformation per annum is 1.1, whereas rate of structural transformation in terms of employment is only 0.401. That means that its structural transformation in employment sector is not taking place, and that is the big question on the state's growth history as well as on the Indian growth history. And because time is less, I'm skipping this one. Let me direct. I'm not talking about just 1 minute. Only look at the employment elasticity figures of industry sector. Look at the last column and look at the employment elasticity figure of industry. Industry has the highest employment elasticity figure. That means it has the potential to create gainful employment in the country. The only thing we need to take right approach towards developing this, our industrial sector, especially for this state of Uttar Pradesh, which is one of the most backward state of the country. So to conclude, the study finds that although there is a shifting of output from agriculture to services sector, but employment is still concentrated in agriculture sector. Thank you. I guess I said all the conclusions. I need not to repeat this. Thank you very much for patience listening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Our next presentation is